Hey everybody, good morning. It's day 121 of Spiritual Healthcare, so welcome everyone. It is good to see you guys. It is, as I say, day 121, so here we are. And I've been getting a ton of emails and questions on the website and stuff like that about photography and video. There's been a lot of ghost videos and stuff like that going around. People asking my opinion, so I want to talk a little bit about photography and paranormal photography and stuff like that today. So welcome everyone. It is good to see you. As I say, it's day 121 of this craziness. So good morning. Good morning, Janae and Sally. Good morning, guys. It's good to see you. I hope you guys have had a really great week. The weather here has been really awesome. It's been a really good week, I have to say. All in all, been getting Galen outside quite a bit, he's been very happy, but he's going into a shed now, so he's done with it. So anyway, but yeah, so today I want to talk a little bit about some of the ghost photography and videos and stuff like that has been traveling around the internet over the last little while. Good morning to Dan. Nice to see you. Good morning, everybody. And talk about some historical ghost photos, as well as some of the ones that I've caught over the years, and what I think makes a good possible ghost photo. Because as I say, there's been a lot going around. I know there's been a sort of this Gettysburg video that's been floating around the internet over the last week or two, and what I've noticed is that because there's been a big controversy about it, and Richard Estep, my co-host on Haunted Hospitals, and I, we took a look at it, and both came to the same conclusion independently, that it was something on this person's windshield, and as they were turning their car, whatever was on their windshield, it caught a glare and it looked like it was moving. So the Gettysburg ghost video, I don't think was a genuine thing, but I want to show you some photos that were genuine things. And what I do when I'm looking at these photos, when you guys send them in to me, what I'm looking for, what our photographers are looking for, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to be able to work with some absolute top-notch photographers in the industry here in Edmonton. And they're all brilliant. They're just absolutely brilliant. They really know their stuff, and I've learned a lot for sure over the years. So we're going to talk about that, and I thought that was a good way to get started. The other question that came in, which I thought we could grab right off the bat, there it is, and I thought this was super cool because this is something we actually haven't talked about. It was a question that came in from who's it coming in from? From Karen, actually, from Karen. So she was asking, is the ghost ship phenomenon real? What is a ghost ship? What does that look like? What is causing it? And I thought that was a great question because we haven't actually talked about that. We've talked about pretty much everything on spiritual healthcare, but we haven't talked about ghost ships. So I wanted to kick into it with that because there's been, of course, people that have photographed it as well. So it's a good launch into our talk about photography today. So the phenomenon of ghost ships, especially in and around the Great Lakes, is something that's been going on for a very long time. And, people that have been, crewmen and, that have sailed for a long time, or that have, been out on the water, and spent a good time out on the water, have seen them. It's been a very common reoccurring story that, of course, you hear in Wayfarer's Tales and all sorts of stuff like that. So what is this ghost ship phenomenon, and what's the dynamic that's going on? So there was a couple of things. I think probably one of the most obvious is the fact that I think many ghost ships are the phenomenon of residual energy, right? So when you've got something that has made a great impact, or has occurred repetitively or anything like that within the environment, under the right conditions, of course, we know that this actually will create an imprint or an image. Because what most people seem to report is that these ghost ships kind of appear and they float along for a little bit, float along, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just up and vanish. It's like watching a movie, and then all of a sudden the movie gets turned off. And of course, we see this phenomenon often with other things, right? With, different apparitions and hauntings and stuff like that. But I think people put the category of ghost ship into, or the subject matter of ghost ship into another category because it's an object, right? So we don't think of residual energy often being about objects disappearing and reappearing and things like that. But I think for the most part, when we look at some of the legends, we look at some of the stories that people have told, it fits that phenomenon quite well. And I think that's often what this is. Now, that's discounting human error also, right? Because we have to, whenever we get a sighting like this, we have to factor in human error. People see the ocean and see the sea as something that's very mysterious. And there's all sorts of stuff that can happen, when you're on a ship, both, reflective wise on the water. You've got a lot of room for human error. So that's something you always have to take into account. But I think the encounters with these ghost ships that are real, I think we can really highly look at something like residual energy as a cause. There's a theory about water that has been passed around within the community about residual energy, which is called the stone tape theory, and that is that water in and of itself has memory and contains memory. Many of you have probably seen the blind studies and things like that about residual, or about the phenomenon of residual energy and water being able to hang on to memory, hang on to emotions and things like that. So there's that as well that you can kind of factor in. So there's a bunch of elements, I think, to the ghost ship phenomenon. And then of course you get the embellishment from folklore and the tales and people that have come off long seafaring journeys in the older days and things like that. And they've got all these stories to tell, and then it gets passed down and it gets embellished as most folklore does. But this isn't an older phenomenon. This doesn't have to be stuck in the past. This is something that people see, as I say, even on the Great Lakes now. So it's pretty cool. So I wanted to talk about photography today because, as I say, I've been getting a lot of pictures, a lot of videos sent in and things like that of people really curious about how the photographs are identified, how we categorize them, what makes a ghost photo. So I wanted to start off by saying, there's no litmus test for a ghost photo. Okay, there isn't. It just doesn't exist. And so basically, when you're looking at a ghost photo, and I'm gonna start with a more famous one, which is actually the tulip staircase here. When you're looking at a ghost photo, ultimately, the photograph itself, we're looking for things that we can rule out. We're not necessarily looking for, is this a ghost? We're looking to try to debunk as much as we can. And so I'll show you guys the tulip staircase. So this was actually taken by a relative of mine, believe it or not. A fellow by the name of Reverend Hardy in Greenwich. And this photo got a lot of attention. For obvious reasons, right? It got a lot of attention. It was taken at a place called the Queen's House, and it was taken in 1966. So this has been around for a very long time. And as you can see, it looks like there's somebody ascending the stairwell. Both Reverend Hardy and his wife did not expect to catch this, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty phenomenal, and there's a lot of detail in it. So when you're looking at photos like this, as I say, we're trying to debunk and trying to rule out what it isn't. We're looking at lighting conditions, and we're even looking at the type of camera that you've used, because that makes a big difference. So probably one of the most controversial subject matters within ghost photos in general is the phenomenon of orbs. And we'll get into that in just a second. I'm going to show you guys a couple of the shots that I've had the privilege of either being involved in or taken over the years. This one I find is super, super cool. So as you can see, there's this really weird sort of blurry mass that's just in the middle of the photograph. The rest of the photograph is completely in focus, as you can see. And then in the middle here, you've got this really weird blurred out patch. Now, this picture was actually taken in the Edmonton River Valley, and which has been haunted as long as I've lived here, that's for sure. It's been a long time. And when we get a blurred out patch like that, we have to really start to look, because when you've got the rest of the photo in focus, ultimately there's something that's moving light in the center of the photograph, right? So we're looking at stuff like that. We're trying to determine, what is happening in the photograph, and what are the conditions the photograph is being taken under. So orbs are probably one of the most controversial and most frustrating for me. And I'm going to show you guys, because you guys have seen enough photos of like orbs that aren't real. So I'm going to show you guys a photo of an orb that is real, because it's pretty cool. Okay, so check this out. So oftentimes when we hear the word orb, right, I'm going to explain how these things are actually created. So when we hear the word orb, we often think of those photos that have these sort of opaque, almost transparent in some areas, little round balls that are showing up all over the photograph. And they've mainly shown up in the last like 15 years or so in pictures. It seems to just have exploded. There's these orb photos. There's a whole book on orb photos. And what's driven me crazy, because of course there's been a debate for years about it, and I don't think the debate should actually be existing, because it's figuring these out is actually quite simple. As to what these are. And of course, people have caught them on infrared cameras or CCTV cameras as well, where you see them like kind of exploding out of a space, and they're like, doing all this weird stuff, and they float away and disappear and whatever, and it looks kind of magical. So what happens when we get these orb forms like that is that we have to start to look at the type of camera that's getting used, okay? So the reason why this has shown up in the last 15 years or so over, say, like film photography and stuff like that, it's mainly a digital camera phenomenon thing, is that when we look at, say, a phone camera or one of those little Sure Shot cameras, anything like that, you've got the flash on the camera that's up here, right? And you've got the lens, which is basically flush with the camera itself, or with the flash, right? So if you look at your phone, the lens and the flash are flush with one another. There's no gap, right? Because you don't have a lens sticking out, you don't have anything like that going on. And what happens is that whenever you don't have that gap, the light and whatnot from not only the flash itself, but from the infrared light that goes out to focus your photograph beforehand, what happens is that it illuminates absolutely everything in front of that lens. Everything, okay? So it's illuminating things like dust, particles, humidity, so moisture particles, pollen, all of these environmental factors that we cannot see with the naked eye. It's illuminating all of it. And our cameras are super smart now. They're super smart. They have autofocus, and what happens is that when they turn around and start to autofocus, they focus on whatever is closest to the lens, right? They're looking for something to focus on, and when they focus on these tiny little particles, what happens? It starts to blur. It blurs out. It expands and it blurs out, and you end up with these what looks like orbs floating around, right? So it's ultimately they tend to be quite explainable. I'm gonna see if I have an orb photo in here anyway. Oh, I do. Check this out. All right. Okay. So here we've got big, beautiful blue orb all blown up, as you can see. All sorts of cool patterns in there. And oftentimes what I'll get is people sending in photos like this and immediately saying, oh my God, I see a face, I see two eyes, I see a nose, I see a mouth, and you guys can probably see that in the picture as well, right? It's very easy to find a face in that. Let's see, we have another one here. I have another orb photo. I think I do. Let's see what else we have. Oh yeah, here we go. This one, people always say that they can see a face in this one. So if you can see, there's like an eye and a nose and another eye. Okay, so both of these photographs, okay, this photograph right here is actually humidity. Okay, so this is a water particle that's actually been blown up and expanded from a photograph, an orb photograph. Okay, and this one is actually dust. Okay? This is actually dust that has been blown up and expanded. And as I say, it's very easy to see a face in this, but this is not paranormal. This hands down, this is a piece of dust. Okay. So that's the issue with the orb photographs, and that's how they're created, is that ultimately you've got a lens that is super flush with the flash. The flash illuminates everything out in front of that lens, and bam, you end up with a blown out a blown out image, right? And then we have this. The human brain has a absolutely fascinating way of finding faces and things. It's called pareidolia. There's actually a term for it. And pareidolia is what causes us to turn this into a face, right? We're just hardwired to look for faces and stuff. That's how we see Jesus in toast, you know? So, but I want to show you guys a photograph of a real orb. Okay. And this was actually taken again in our river valley. So this was pretty cool. And this is probably one of my favorite pictures, actually, because it's brilliant. And as you can see, you guys can probably see it's got a little tail on the end, so it's actually changed directions. It's quite bright. It's a pretty phenomenal. It's lighting up whatever's around it. It's a pretty beautiful photograph. And they don't have to stay in those particular shapes and colors either. So, the one that I really wanted to show you guys, here it is. All right. Oh, this one is actually pretty cool too. I'll show you guys this one. This is another not paranormal orb, but it's very pretty, right? It's got all the colors. So this one is actually, this is pollen expanded. It's everything that makes me sneeze, but that's pollen. And Robert's asking, what about lens flare? Yeah, lens flare is absolutely a factor as well. I usually don't get a lot of people sending me photos of lens flare, though. It seems like people usually clue into that as to what that is. The main problem seems to be in the dust and particle angle. So this is another really cool one that was taken in the Edmonton River Valley here. Which, again, one of my favorite photographs. It's got a little, like, head on the end of it, which is pretty neat. And this one was fascinating. For the longest time, it was about 6 or 7 years, we were doing a study down there where we were looking at the occurrences of these bizarre lights. And as you can see, it's changed direction, it's changing patterns, and it looks dotted like this because this light is actually strobing. Okay, so it's flashing. So as it's making the pattern, it's leaving this sort of dotted appearance. It's really, really, really cool. Marge was saying a snake. Yeah, I know, right? Totally. It's one of the neatest pictures. So when we were looking at something like this, when we go down and start to take photographs, one of the things that we use most often is what they call an SLR camera. Okay, so an SLR camera is basically a camera where the flash and the lens have a distance between them. So they tend to be the more expensive cameras because, you know, they are more like a professional model. But you won't get that orb phenomenon near as much because you've got the flash that's now extended away from that lens, so it's not illuminating everything in front of the lens. It knocks down the orb factor by a drastic amount. So oftentimes that's why you don't see professional photographers usually complaining about orbs in their photos, is because they don't get them as much for that reason, and it all has to do with the lens. So here's another really cool picture of these really, really bizarre lights, which I think is just super cool. So these were the ones that we were catching in the River Valley. There's a bit of a glare, so you guys probably can't see. That one is dotted as well. It's strobing also. It's quite long. And in the same photo, we had this little guy over here that was doing its thing. And they were really, really, really cool to look at. The one that ended up catching our attention, because we started to go through this and basically break it down to try to figure out what these were. And one of the first things we thought of was, you know, I wonder if they're insects that we just don't know about, right? Because, I mean, I'm not an entomologist. I have no idea. So we sent these photos off to the Society of Entomology because in this field of study, you cannot be afraid to go ask people. Like, hands down, you will not know everything that you encounter. You just bloody well won't. You won't know everything. You're going to have to reach out and ask people questions. So we sent them off to the Society of Entomology, and they had no idea what they were. So we basically ruled out insects. The next thing that we were looking at was the river valley geography itself, because our river valley, and this is where it helps to really get into the history of the land, is actually built on a quartz bed. And the reason why is because this used to be volcanic land over in Edmonton, way back. And when you get volcanic land, oftentimes you'll get a buildup of quartz because there's a lot of pressure and things like that. And when you get pressure on quartz, you can end up with plasma. So little lights, plasma is the first form of energy. You get these little lights that show up and whatnot. And we were wondering if maybe that's what we were seeing with these crazy little lights. Maybe this was some sort of geography anomaly. Or geographical anomaly. There we go. So this is also really, really cool. So this was a photo that really changed our minds about these being something that was a geographical. And as you can see, we've got the orange light and the white light here. And if you take a look at the white light, it's making quite the pattern, right? If you take a look at the orange light, it's making the exact same pattern, roughly. Okay? Making the exact same pattern. And what was significant for us about this was that when we traced the intensity of the lights themselves, they were making the same pattern, but they were doing it by going in different directions. So for us, this is awesome, because this shows us that there might be some form of intelligence there, which I think is pretty wicked. Robert was asking, could these be UFOs or some other phenomenon? You know, that's an interesting point you bring up. I don't think so. Only because they were occurring right in front of us. These weren't something that was occurring off in the distance. They were occurring quite close to us. So these were within, I would say, 2 to 3 meters of us. And they were happening extremely quickly. They were zipping around and just, they were creating patterns and stuff like that, sometimes beyond the ability to physically see them. We had to be able to capture them. You'd see a blink or something like that, and the way we were able to capture the patterns is to get them on film, because otherwise there was no way to do it. So I don't think these were UFO related, but you never know. There's definitely been enough cases of lights and orbs and things like that where they have been UFO related, or there's been sightings in the area of UFOs and stuff like that. So the next picture I wanted to show you guys is not a photo of lights. This is something that's a little bit different. And this is actually going to be featured on, it's some TV show that just called me and they wanted to feature these on it. I don't know what the show is going to be. We'll find out, I guess, soon. But this is probably, well, it's definitely the prize photo that we've got on file right now. And this picture is probably one of the most unique photographs that I've ever been a part of catching. This was actually a case here in Edmonton, and the fellow who actually had this condo now works with me as a photographer. That's what he does now. So this was actually taken at a condo where there was a lot of poltergeist activity going on. There was a lot of movement of objects. There was a lot of they would hear someone in the kitchen. The kitchen was off to this side here, and they would hear doors opening and closing. They're hearing all sorts of crazy things. And lo and behold, we were all outside. There was nobody in the apartment or in the condo at the time. We go outside to start to document and take photos, and lo and behold, that person shows up in the doorway. And as you can see, you can kind of see through her arm as well. So that's not quite right. And we had absolutely no explanation for this photo whatsoever. What made this photo special for us, and this is where you guys are going to get a bit of lesson in photography, was the fact not that photo as itself was cool, but not near as cool as the fact that the photos around it showed nothing. So those are what we call control shots, and this is where things get really, really important. So whenever we go to take a photograph, we take more than one of everything, okay? So there's like 3 or 4 photos, if not more, of everything that we go and shoot, because if we catch an anomaly, we catch something like this in a photograph, we have to be able to look at the other photograph, look at the surrounding area, and go, was this something like, was this a natural occurrence? Was this somebody standing there we didn't see? What happened, right? And usually when we get the control shots around the photographs, if you guys send me photos, it's the first thing I'm going to ask you is send me the photos that were around it. Then we can usually identify whether something's environmental or something like, you know, it's something that's naturally occurring. So the control shots for this photo were as follows. So as you can see, there's the first one, and there's nobody in the doorway, right? The second one, we have our person in the doorway. Our third one, this one came out a little dark because the flash did not go off, not trigger. No one's there. And in this one, finally, last but not least, there is not one person in the doorway. So the reason why this is significant to us is because this person, if they were leaning into the shot, because these are taken in succession of each other, if they were leaning into the shot, we would have caught them leaning into that doorway. We just would have. The timing just, it wouldn't have allowed for anything else. And so the fact that I can turn around and make that argument and can back up this picture, it becomes something that's really, really important, especially when you're demonstrating this to either an audience or skeptics or anything like that. It's pretty cool. So this is it's a phenomenal picture. I'm super proud of it. And as I say, it's one of those pictures that kind of goes down in a once in a lifetime career, career experience. It was pretty cool. So it was really interesting. So when we look at photos, we're looking for all of those things. We're looking for the environmental factors. We're looking for weather conditions. We're looking for the geology of the property if it's relevant. We're looking for things like apparitions. Can it be explained? Is it a trick of the camera? What are the control shots that are in and around the photo? And one of the things that I noticed, and one of the ways, probably one of the top 3 ways that you can spot a hoax photo, is something that is, this, and it always makes me laugh. Ask why they took that photo. So if you've got, for example, someone who has taken a photograph of the corner of their dining room, and there's an apparition in the corner of their dining room in the photograph, because now you've got the apps and stuff like that that can make it look like there's a ghost standing there and stuff like that. Ask yourself that question. Why did the person take a photograph of the corner of their dining room? Why did they do it? That doesn't make any sense. Or why did they take a picture of their wall? Why did they take a picture of, whatever it is? But that's the main question you want to ask. Does it make sense to have taken this photo? So if they are coming to you and going, hey, wait a minute, I just took this, I was taking pictures of my family or something like that. Ask, why did you take the picture? If the picture doesn't look like it made any sense, that's why. Okay, then usually that it institutes as probably a hoax. It's probably something like that. The apps that are coming out now, some of them are extremely good, and some of them can really make it look like there's something in the photo. So we have to be super careful, and I try to stay on top of those and whatnot. Sarah's asking if she could get a card. What card are you referring to? And maybe. Maybe. So I wanted to share that with you guys because ghost photos are, there is no litmus test for a ghost photo. But however, there is ways of ruling stuff out to identify exactly what it is that you might be seeing. There is no, as I say, there is no ghost box, there is no ghost meter, there's like none of those things. All we can do is just take stock in our environment, know what we're looking for, and ask when we don't know. As I say, I don't think I'm a terrible photographer, but at the same time, I am not anywhere near the caliber of some of the people that I work with who know these systems inside, outside, and backwards. So I definitely rely on them to do a lot of the photography analysis and stuff, because they just know more than I do, and they'll catch things. So it's really important. So that being said, I have a great tidbit to read to you guys from Faith in the Valley today, because we got to go there. And I loved this because, you know, when people are, you know, growing and learning, especially in this field, we really kind of put ourselves out there. And when we present something, you know, a piece of evidence like a photograph like this, or, you know, whatever it is, when people come and offer photos, you know, they really are putting themselves on the line, right? Because they don't know if they're going to, you know, walk away feeling like an idiot, or they're going to walk away, you know, maybe they're really convinced and then they turn around and they find out it's, you know, not what they thought it was, or whatever. And I think we really have to respect the growth of where people are in this field. And, you know, everybody is learning. I've definitely had, you know, points in my career in the past where I've been so sure that I've caught something that's paranormal, and then we turn around and go look at it, you know, 2 weeks later when we realize it's not paranormal at all, and we have the explanation is right there. So we've all had it. Like, we've all done it. We've all had that happen. So yeah, it's, so Janae is asking, she hopes one day to become a paranormal investigator. How do you get started? So that's such a good question. So one of the things that I would recommend is going through, a place like the Rhine Institute. So the Rhine Education Center, the Rhine Institute, the Rhine Education Center has some amazing courses, put out by people like Lloyd Auerbach, you know, John Kruth, a bunch of different people who are so versed and have been doing this for decades. But you want to go through an accredited place like that, to be able to learn properly, do your homework, and take as many courses as you can. The Rhine Education Center is probably one of the best places, to be looking for courses, and sometimes they'll do them for just like donation. It's amazing. They've got tons of lectures and people that are presenting. And the great thing about the people in this field is that, for the most part, when you get into the academic side of things, they're so genuinely open, and will share that knowledge with you, without any hesitation. Like, they just will. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend the Rhine Education Center, because they are really such a great place to go, you know. And from there, you know, getting a hold of books by people like Dr. Cal Cooper, you know, all of these different individuals, that are just phenomenal. There's also another course that I participate in every year, and you guys should do this too, because it's free. It's absolutely free. You have no excuse. And it's called Paramook. So it's Paramooc, right? So a MOOC is a massive online classroom, okay? Massive online classroom, and para because it's paranormal. So Paramook 2020, I'm not sure when that will be coming up. I don't know if, did we do 20? I think we did 2020. So it'd be 2021, I guess. Something like that. Anyway, it'll be coming up again. But I hands down highly recommend come and join Paramook with me and with all the other people that come and learn. It is completely free. If you guys look up Paramook on Facebook, you will find there's a Facebook group that you can join, and then you will get the notifications of when the classes start and things like that. It is definitely not a class for, you know, hobbyist ghost hunters. It is a class for people who are genuinely interested in parapsychology. We talk about everything from psychology to past studies, to near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. We've even covered sleep disorders, UFOs, all sorts of things. And it is absolutely, it's just an in-depth class, and it's hosted by the Alvarado Zingroni Parapsychology Foundation, and they are brilliant. They are friends of the Parapsychological Foundation in New York, and these two, they knock it out of the park. They've got their PhD in parapsychology. They've been researching for decades. So I highly recommend Paramook, you guys. It is absolutely phenomenal. You will not regret it. They usually it's 2 classes a week, usually for between 4 to 6 weeks. It's, as I say, it's one of my, I so look forward to Paramook every year, like every single year. It's brilliant. And the people you will meet, I'm telling you, all these people that we talk about in photos and with research, and people like Dr. Dean Radin, Lloyd Auerbach, they have some of the best instructors in the world. Dr. Ed May, who founded and conducted the Stargate Project. If any of you guys are familiar with the Stargate Project, he was teaching for a while. It's absolutely the coolest thing. So that's what I would do. Get started. Ryan Education Center and Paramook. Totally. So I wanted to read a little bit from Faith in the Valley, you guys, because I found a great paragraph that I think is so applicable to that part of the journey. So check this out. Wherever you are, at any time and place in your life, you will get what you need by doing what you need to do. Others may not like it or understand it, but you are on a mission. Your mission is etched into the very essence of your being. It's called DNA, discovering new altitudes. How else will you know what you can do unless you do it? People may warn you about the dangers, discourage you from taking chances, but just remember, most missions are wrought with danger. The falls and pitfalls you encounter toughen your hide, straighten your back, and coat your booty with Teflon. If you attempt to alter or change your mission simply to please other people, you will alter your DNA and retard your growth process. By the way, your DNA is nobody's business but yours. You're not required to discuss your lessons or growth process with anyone unless you choose to. Your growth, new altitudes, and new dimensions will be fully recognizable. It's not your mission, assignment, or responsibility to live up to, down to, or according to anyone's opinion of you. And when you realize this, you also realize how far you can soar. So it's so true. And I hope you guys, I hope I see some of you guys at Paramook, because I think you guys would absolutely thrive in it. They are like-minded people. They are like-minded people with new information. And I have learned a ridiculous amount from these individuals, because one of the things is to say, you cannot get into this field and do it alone. You can't. You just can't. And if you can do it alone, you're not going big enough. That's just how it is. If you can do your goal by yourself, you're not going big enough. That's the rule for the day. That's the rule. That's it. That's the rule for the day. So before we go, you guys, we got to do some affirmations, because that's what we got to do. Got to go into our week with the right energy. So everybody take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. Thank you guys so much for a wonderful, 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 wonderful spiritual health care this morning. I am so, so, so grateful for all of this, and I'm so grateful for you guys just being here every Wednesday and being able to do this. This is so awesome. And I will see you all next week on spiritual healthcare, because that's what we do. That's what we do. So thank you guys. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you then.